WNST, Towson, Baltimore this week about the Preakness and Old Hilltop. Obviously, the Orioles playing into the middle of the night out in Detroit, now coming home against the Blue Jays this weekend. But we've got boxing news here, and I don't do a ton of boxing around here, but I don't get guessed as great as my next one. I think he's been at every fight since Ali Frazier. I've seen him on my television many times, and we've rubbed elbows at a couple of fights out in Vegas over the years. We welcome Al Bernstein back onto the program. He's in town in Baltimore doing some really cool charitable work, as well as calling some Showtime boxing down at the new MGM National Harbor down off the D.C. Beltway. 3 big fights, but a huge fight over in London with the Baltimorean. Al, first off, welcome to Baltimore. I know you don't get here quite often enough, but you were here plenty of times during the Sugar Ray Leonard era, I have a feeling, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. And, of course, here and in Washington. And but I was not, while I have been at a lot of fights, I was not at the Johnson-Jeffries fight. I want to point that out.
All right. Well, I mean, I figured you were somewhere with Dempsey back there. Yeah, I mean, Patterson, Cassius Clay. I'm thinking, really, what was your first fight? I mean, I feel like you've been a part of this forever.
The first big fight that I really covered, and it was as a magazine writer, was Kenny Norton and Jimmy Young.
Okay.
I was writing for Boxing Illustrated, and that was a few years before I got with ESPN. And that was the first really time I was really covering. I wrote for that magazine before I got with ESPN, so that was a while ago.
Well, Jimmy Young fought Ali down at the Capitol Center. I mean, Ali fought a couple of times here locally during that period of his life where it started to go the other way and the Sphinxes and the Holmes started showing up. But, you're in here with a Baltimore kid who's over in London. This is a really interesting thing you guys are doing at Showtime, and I know you did some charity work here on Thursday in Baltimore as well, but tell me about the fight in London and the 3 fights we have here in D.C., and I guess for everyone out there with Showtime, and I have Showtime, you can put the television on, and this thing's going to go seamlessly, right?
Yeah, it ends up being a big quadruple header. We're going to be taking in the feed Gervonta Davis, of course, a junior lightweight champion, who, as you point out, is a Baltimorean and is potentially a potential real star in the sport. He is young. He's got amazing hand speed, lots of power. And he won the title against Jose Pedraza in a fight that I think a lot of people weren't sure he could win. Some felt like that might have been too big a step up for him, but it clearly wasn't. He was brilliant in winning the fight, and now he goes across the pond to defend it against Liam Walsh in hostile territory. And Walsh is a good fighter, but if Davis can perform really well in this, he will further cement the fact that he could very well be a star in the sport. And, of course, while he's junior lightweight now, he'll probably move up to lightweight, and there could be some monstrous fights waiting for him there, like Mikey Garcia or Vasil Lomachenko, Jorge Linares, just a lot of great fighters. So he's a young man that potentially could be something truly special. We're going to take that fight in from London. And then Gary Russell and Oscar Escandón will battle in the fight here, the main event here at the MGM. And then we also have Andre Durrell's back against Jose Uzcategui, who is a very, very good fighter. That fight that's a sleeper fight. That could be a really, really exciting match. Uzcategui is a very, very powerful fighter from Venezuela. Of course, Durrell, a great boxer, puncher. So that one is a big one. And Rancis Barthelemy also on the card against Gurel Relic, and that's a good fight. So we've got a lot of boxing. 3 matches, at the MGM, and then also the match coming from England.
Well, Al, it's been a period. I've been doing this for 25 years here, and when I first went on, we were just on the other end of the Tyson era, and of course we had Asim Rahman here locally, who was a great fighter. We've had several great fighters, Vincent Petway come through Baltimore that sort of shined a spotlight and brought the spotlight into this thing, and then UFC kind of took over for a number of years. I really feel like over the last 3 to 5 years, I hear more about boxing than I did, let's say, the first decade of the century, where it really felt like it was slipping away, even out in Vegas, where UFC began to dominate the modern news and I guess the millennial set. But boxing has turned around a little bit here the last couple of years, I think.
Yeah, well, the sport, the 90s were not the best time for the sport, even though there were stars like Roy Jones Jr. and De La Hoya and Tyson. The sport didn't make the kind of matches it needed to, and then the mainstream media really stopped covering it in the early 2000s. Boxing's product kept getting better after. It's almost as if by osmosis, everybody realized, well, we have to get better. We have to make sure we make matches people want to see. And really, your point's well taken. In the last 5 or 6 years, boxing's product has been excellent. It's been a struggle to get the media back covering it. 2013 was the very best year boxing's had, I think, since about maybe 1989. This year, 2017, has been almost as good as 2013. We've had amazing fights. Just a couple weeks ago, I was in Wembley Stadium with 90,000 people watching Vladimir Klitschko and Anthony Joshua in what turned out to be a wildly exciting heavyweight matchup. And that's just one of maybe 15 or 20 great fights that we've already had, and the year is only half ended. So, boxing's product has been very good, and hopefully that can lead to a little more coverage.
Yeah, you mentioned Davis as a local product, and you said something interesting. And, I'm not here to mince words, but you said he could be a real star. Define what a real star is these days, Al. I mean, I do the Super Bowl. Like Deontay Wilder comes by, he's 6'7", he sits with me every year, we hang out. But, it's not like I get boxers coming through to want to be a star. And I think the biggest star in the world's Mayweather, and I don't know that he puts the same light on boxing that like Donald Trump puts on politics. There is a little bit of a shower you need after you spend a little bit of time with him, and that's unfortunate, I think.
An interesting analogy given what's going on. But
not a Russian shower, Golden. I'm talking about a shower, a clean water shower, an outdoor shower, right?
Yeah, exactly. The interesting thing is that these days, because boxing doesn't get the mainstream coverage it once did, it's harder to be a breakout star. So when I say Gervonta Davis is going to be a star, what he has the potential to be is one of the best fighters in the sport. And hopefully that equates for him to being known. And the sport, as I said, one of the things in America, not so much elsewhere, but in America, it's a little bit more of a niche sport. But somebody like Gervonta Davis, perfect example. I mean, he has amazing physical skills. And he's a very fine, he also he's well-trained. He knows what to do in the ring. When you look at him, he just screams out potential superstar. And what he needs is for people to know about him. And that's what you develop as you go along. And now in boxing, because there is a little bit more attention being paid, fighters like him can now be a little bit more of crossover a star. I hope that, for instance, here's an example. I mean, you're in a city here where there are sports franchises, there are many sports fans. You hope that he finds a place, that for fans that are even casual boxing fans, they will say, wow, we could have one of the best fighters in the world right here in our city.
Well, I think we felt that with Asim Rahman, and certainly in my childhood, I tell Sugar Ray Leonard every time I see him, my dad took me down to see the fights the first time he ever fought after the 76 Olympics, and, that's what made me a boxing fan in the 80s and made me want to watch Larry Holmes and buy pay-per-views and see Mike Tyson and be involved in the way I was, but, it does sort of fade away if it doesn't come to you at this point, and you've been at this from the time when, I had some guests on earlier, look, it's Preakness Week, right, so we're talking horse racing, racing, baseball, boxing, when we were younger people, those were the sports that rule. All of those sports now have to claw and fight for any sort of old school and new world media attention. For boxing, I mean, I would think that it really does need a star that isn't the type of star that Floyd Mayweather is, which is a divisive star, but sort of the people's champion, someone that everybody wants to get behind,
Yeah, there are many great fighters. It is, I'm going to sound like a Republican presidential candidate, of which I'm neither. People just need to know about them, and they need to be told about them. A perfect example of some of these. Look, we have a fight coming up on May 27th. Errol Spence Jr., who is a phenomenal welterweight, is taking on Kell Brook, who is a welterweight champion from England. There's going to be 30,000 people in a stadium in Sheffield. We're going to be, televising it on Showtime. That is a fight that deserves attention, and it's a great, great fight. And Errol Spence Jr., like Gervonta Davis, could be a star in this sport. He's on the verge of doing it. If he beats Kell Brook, and it is not at all a given. Kell Brook is a terrific fighter, but he's the kind of fighter. He was an Olympian. Again, people just need to know about him, and I think, I'm not a cheerleader for boxing. I cover it. I don't see my role as being a cheerleader for the sport, but I think when it's good, people should know it's good. And I've always been a believer. You mentioned horse racing and baseball and boxing, being in a different niche than they once were. Some would argue that except for the NFL, everything's a niche sport. They just have bigger niches, some sports. But those sports are ones that, when they're really good, and they do have good players, and they do have good talent, I just think it's incumbent upon the media to give it proportional coverage. You're not going to cover horse racing or boxing or some other sports like you would the NBA, nor in some ways would you cover in a lot of places where there's not a franchise. Obviously, like the Orioles being here and playing such great baseball, they're going to get coverage, and Major League Baseball is going to get more coverage. In Omaha, Nebraska, baseball is not going to be covered as much as it is as the NFL. But I'm a believer that you give it the right proportionate coverage, and then the sports will find their place.
Here's Al Bernstein. He's been doing boxing since I was a young man. He's still a young man. He's here in Baltimore and will be down in D.C. You can follow him at Al Bernstein on Twitter. And
exactly. I started when I was 10 years old.
Dude, you are a Twitter machine, right? I mean,
I love the tweet.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess the other part of this is there's this real broadcaster, this real reporter, this journalist thing, and you say you're not a cheerleader. I don't think of you as a cheerleader for boxing, but I certainly consider you one of the faces of boxing, and I consider you an advocate for boxing, Yeah,
and I'm not a glass half empty person, period. So I believe that you can present an honest picture of everything without being a critic, a negative person, but without pumping something up. I just think you basically look at things in a realistic fashion, and you're willing to say that somebody's good, and you're willing to say that a fight is good, and you're willing to say that somebody has made their skills better or whatever. I'm a big believer in that. When I was a youngster, my father, who passed away when I was very young, taught me that you respect people's efforts, whether it's athletes or performers or anybody. You respect what they're doing, and boxing especially, because it's a very tough sport. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. And we live in a time in the media where that isn't always the case.
Well, you've been coming to Baltimore and to this area for a long time. We've always had, much like we've had basketball stars here, and, the Muggsy Bogues have come through here, and the Russ Williams and all those guys. The boxing part of this it really starts on the streets with kids in, who could be troubled kids. Mr. Mack tried to pull these kids off the street for years, and I know you know that story. But, Catherine Pugh, our mayor here, has gotten involved. You're involved in this House of Boxing Champions in Baltimore Connects. You put something together here and came to town to participate in this while you're doing the fights for Showtime on Saturday night, which I think's cool too.
Yeah, I did, and I was on hand with the mayor as we kicked off this program, which is called Baltimore Connects, as you point out, and they're going to help. I was with the folks who run USA Boxing, and one of their laments this last week in Las Vegas, and one of their laments is that they can't always help some of these clubs. And in this case, House of Boxing Champions and the mayor's office and the city of Baltimore are kind of combining to help the boxing club, Umar, and they're gonna really help them with the House of Boxing Champions, providing them with safety equipment and helping them with fundraising and travel grants so the kids can compete. And amateur boxing program is not designed to win the Olympic gold medal. I know we all like seeing that, and we all lament when the U.S. amateur boxing team doesn't do well. That's actually not the purpose of amateur boxing. Amateur boxing exists to help youngsters, young men and women, get some self-esteem, find their place in the world, and have an activity that will help them replace other activities that might not be so good. So that's why I'm happy to help with amateur boxing, and I think this program will be a good one.
All right, look, man, I'm going to go like new school here and ask two questions because, you're the sage guy I want to hear this from. What was your favorite fight that you ever attended that you got on a plane, flew somewhere? Maybe you live in Vegas, so maybe it was down the street somewhere, but what's your favorite fight? If you had to put a film on right now and sit and watch 10 rounds, 12 rounds, or maybe one round, your best memory as a fight guy.
The best fight I ever announced was the Diego Corrales Jose Luis Castillo fight, which was in 2004, their first fight. Most people think it might be one of the one or two best lightweight championship fights of all time, and it was a spectacular fight. And of course, I announced Hagler Hearns, which was tremendous. But this fight was like Hagler Hearns times 3 because it went 9.5 rounds, and Hagler Hearns went 3.5. So.
Some would say the most violent 10 minutes in the history of humanity, right?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was astonishing. I mean, that fight was amazing. But, the Castillo Corrales fight, truly, and it's hard to pick because, I've done so many fights and seen so many fights. And another fight that this may surprise people, but I was there covering just as a journalist, Kenny Norton and Larry Holmes many years ago. A spectacular fight. But there's so many, it's hard to pick from. But Corrales Castillo, and I wrote in my book that I thought that was probably the most exciting I've announced.
All right, so what's your greatest regret? Was there a fight you didn't get on the plane and go participate in? Were you at Buster Douglas Tyson? I guess you probably were, but there were some weird ones,
No, I wasn't there. Actually, it's funny because ESPN, we decided they didn't think it was worth sending somebody to Tokyo to cover it, and many people didn't go.
Well, that's why I brought it up, because it is kind of one of those oddball that was never supposed to end that way, and I'm thinking, where the hell was Al Bernstein for that? Sitting in a pub somewhere in Vegas saying, oh, my God, that just happened, right?
Well, and I was doing another assignment for ESPN, and then when that happened, I flew to Bristol, Connecticut to be in the studio where we did a whole show about it. But many people, no one had really expected that kind of result, and it was a long way to go, and a lot of people weren't there. So that would be I guess that would be one that you could say there was a regret.
Did you miss another one?
I'm trying to think of something that I
feel like you've been at every major fight. I mean, I brought that one up figuring you were probably there, Yeah,
I've been, and because I've worked in other areas, a lot of times I might, even if I wasn't broadcasting them, I might have been doing something whether it's for SportsCenter or because for all my years at ESPN, and I've done other endeavors since then while I've been at Showtime. So a lot of times I am there, not announcing it, but in some capacity, and then sometimes just there. So I've seen a lot of the major fights. Obviously, I've missed some, but there is one fight I wish I could have been at. I wasn't in the business at that time. I would have loved to have been at the first Ali Frazier fight. That would have been an extraordinary moment and an amazing, event to witness.
Well, the good news is we both get to hang out with Bert Sugar once in a while. So if you touched him, you touched every fight there ever was, I guess, right?
That's true. Bert was at everything. He was a great guy, and And he might have been at the Johnson Jefferson fight.
And he's not here to dispute it now, but if he wouldn't dispute it, he probably would come up with a story for it. Al, I've always enjoyed your work. A pleasure to have you on. Don't be a stranger when you're around here. Thanks for doing some good work while you're here in Baltimore representing the sport. And we'll see you on Saturday night on Showtime, calling the fights from London to D.C. and having some Baltimore and some local roots in there. I appreciate you dropping by here on Preakness Week, man.
Should be a lot of fun. And by the way, the MGM there, they want to get very involved in boxing, so that'll be fun. And I will be back for Baltimore Connects again. So when I come back in town, I'll let you know.
Al, I'd love to do that, man. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You got it. Al Bernstein joining us here. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Al Bernstein or at Showtime Television or Wikipedia him. Longtime journalist and chronicler of all things sweet science in town. They're going to be down at the MGM on Saturday night. 3 fights there, 1 fight over in London. Al will be calling the fights at National Harbor down in Oxon Hill. And I'm hoping to get down there not just for fights but also for some concerts. I've been seeing too many people up on my Facebook page sharing share videos and whatnot. So hopefully I'll get down there at some point. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox digitally each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's automatic. That's like Pointer Sisters, right? Yeah, I think so. It's got to be automatic. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness. They're $10 a month. They're around the corner, and I know it's been a little moist and a little warm out, so you're feeling the bikini heat. Get out, get your workout in, get the Planet Fitness around the corner from you. Yes, you can afford it, and it's good for you. Last but never least, any breaking news, and the Orioles have been moving pitchers back and forth and up and down, and Rocky Blyer and Richard Blyer and all the Blyers. When that happens, it comes to you first on the WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and Dennis Colatzos is here this Thursday, next Thursday, and every Thursday from 3 until 5, driving you home. It is the SSV on WNST. Birds entertaining the Blue Jays all weekend long. I'll be out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.